when you're going to go pitch, man, your tonality, your energy better go up, because part of your job during the pitch is to get somebody excited, right? Like, oh man, this is like what I need. Oh, hell yeah. This guy is getting like this. I feel like this is what I need. I'm going to be successful if I get this, and I know it. And it's subconsciously, if you as a salesperson are excited, they'll naturally, you're going to see, man, their tonality will go up with you and they'll get excited with you.
Our guest today is the founder of One Call Closers, a sales agency that has worked with influencers such as Dean Graziosi, Tony Robbins, Robbie Blanchard, and many others to help scale their online offers to $1 million per month. In the span of 3 years, One Call Closers has sold over $40 million in the digital product space and has built over 13 seven-figure sales teams. Welcome to the show, the acquisition king, Richard Mugica.
Mike, what's up, man? Thanks for having me on the show, dude. I'm pretty excited about this.
I'm amped up too. It's the first time we met, and I don't know how the heck we haven't met yet. It seems like we're doing a lot of cool stuff hanging in a similar space.
I was thinking the same thing, man. I was like, Mike, I was looking at your last time. I'm like, dude, this guy looks like he's pretty legit. He's got all these shows going on. I was thinking the same thing. So yeah, I'm glad we could connect, man. Let's do
now
this.
It happened. It happened.
That's it.
We don't have to talk about it anymore. We made it happen. So I appreciate you being on the show. I have a sales background. Many of the people tuning in that are return listeners or viewers of the show, thank you for being with us, first of all, on Apple, Spotify, you name it, on all the audio platforms. Also, our YouTube audience, thank you for being with us today as well. But yeah, our audience knows that I have a love for sales. I've come from a sales background. That's where I've learned the game in working for some
100%.
Great organizations. And when I've had people on the show that talk about sales, I usually like to pick their brain and kind of see how they operate. And I can geek out a little bit, believe it or not. So I'm excited to have you on the show.
Save you.
Yeah. And I just want people to know that they can go to it's the number 1, callclosers.com. And again, your social media is clickable in the show notes. So with that said, Let's get this thing kicked off. You ready?
Let's do it, man.
Awesome. So I love story. Story is why I do the podcast, bring people on. I don't necessarily want to know everything that you're doing in the moment. I like to hear the build up of your story, a little bit of the why you do what you do. And I heard this cool thing about you is that you actually were working as a truck driver. I believe it was for your dad. Was the story, right? And you left that because it wasn't purpose driven. It wasn't something you enjoyed. And now look at yourself. You're helping people close over $40,000 a month in online sales, and even bigger than that for some of your clients. So that's a huge trajectory. And I just love you. You could share as much or as little of that story as you'd like. But I'm going to kick back. I like to hear how the heck did that all happen?
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's you're spot on, Mike. So I'll tell you what, dude, I never thought I'd be right here right now. Never thought I'd be in sales. In fact, 5 years ago, I looked at my wife and I said, babes, honestly, I don't think I'm ever going to make over 6 figures a year, but we had come to terms with that. Like, hey, that's fine. We'll be happy anyways, right? But yeah, I was working for my dad, man. This is about 5 years ago, maybe a little over that. And I was a truck driver, absolutely hated it. It was $20 an hour. And I was married at the time. I had 2 kids. And I just knew that I had to do something different, man. And so I remember looking at my wife and I said, babes, I'm done with it. I'm out of here. Like, I can't do it anymore. And she said, okay, well, what's the next move? And I said, well, I'm going to put in my 2 weeks and I'm going to make something happen. I didn't know what that was, Mike, but I just knew I could make something happen.
You decided to leave before you had the make it happen thing? Like you just said,
I completely decided to make it. Yeah.
You
I did,
burned
man.
all the ships and you said, I'm going to force myself to make a change.
It was so bad, Mike, that literally at my dad's office, I would go to the restroom multiple times a day, not because I had to use the restroom, but because I was just didn't like it. And I would sit in the restroom and I would think about what I could do, like the other things that maybe were available to me, the other possibilities in life that I could pursue. I used to do that every day and just sit in there. I remember my dad would be like, dude, what are you doing in the restroom all the time? I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do here? Right?
Yeah. So do you have a good relationship with your dad? Was he okay with you coming to terms with doing something different? Or did
Great relationship with my dad.
Oh, that's
yeah,
awesome.
we had a great relationship. But, you know, it's tough when you're working for your dad, right? Because are you a son or are you a business associate? And how do you define the terms of that, right? Like that was tough. But I've always been close with my dad.
That's awesome.
That's for sure.
So he respected the decision, and now you're doing well. So he's like, okay, I'm glad you were dreaming in the bathroom. I'm glad you're thinking about different things. So, you know, our parents' vision for us is not always our vision that we have for ourselves. So,
100%, man.
Now, what about?
100%.
I mean, you don't just become sales is something there's different mastery levels. It's kind of like a black belt, right? And you don't just become a black belt without actually doing it. I don't think there's a thing you can talk about, whether it's in the arts, entertainment, business, sports. You don't become Pro Bowl level without getting your butt kicked a little bit first and figuring things out. And so how did you talk about your sales experience then? Where did you get your cut your teeth?
So if I continue the story, I'll tell the story quick for you. So if I continue the story, I put in my 2 weeks, right? And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I went on Indeed and I was like, oh man, like, let me just see if there's anything out there. I saw this job posting and it said, hey man, we're looking for a guy that loves fitness and wants to change the world. Right. And I said, hey, that sounds like me. I've always been into fitness. I applied for the position. They gave me a call. They said, hey, Rich, come down. Let's chat. And so I had my first interview with a lady named Jasmine. And we kind of hit it off, right? It was a good interview. And then she's like, hey, let me set you up with my boss. His name is Bedros Keuilian, right? And so I'm thinking, Bedros, he's probably like a short little, Mexican dude. We'll see how this goes, right? Well, I get into that interview, man, with Bedros. And I had chills running down my arms because I knew when I met this man, my life was going to change. And it's hard to describe, Mike, but we hit it off so well. And he asked me, he's like, hey man, what do you do? And I said, well, I work for my dad. At the time I called him Bedros. So I said, hey, Bedros, I work for my dad, XYZ. I hate it. I said, hey, I've looked online. I've actually tried to do an online fitness company before this where I was trying to, create social media. And he started asking me all these questions like, hey, who do you follow? I said, oh man, I've been following like Dean Graziosi. I love Tony Robbins stuff, Vince Del Monte, Elliot Hulse. I'm like telling him about all these guys. He's like, oh, that's interesting. He's like, do you know a majority of those guys you just mentioned, they're actually in my coaching programs.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa, dude, that's intense. Right. Yeah. And so anyways, we hit it off, man. It was a great interview. And then he asked me to come work for him. And I said, dude, absolutely. If I can just be around this guy, I know my life's going to change. And so I remember saying yes, not knowing exactly what I was going to do in his company. I just knew I wanted to be a part of it. And the first day I get there, he says, all right, man, I'm going to put you in the sales. I'm like, sales?
Yeah.
I'm like, bro, I've never sold anything in my life.
Wow, you went right in the cooker.
I never thought I'd ever get into sales. I thought sales was sleazy, slimy. I didn't want to be a salesperson, right? And so he's like, hey, man, you ever sold anything? I said, no, I've never sold really like over the phone or anything like that. No. He's like, hey, let me give you a training real quick. So he takes me in the back of his office. And he does a straight line, like Jordan Belfort's straight line system. If you know, if you're familiar with that, he's like, "Hey, man, imagine the sales a straight line. You start here. Your goal is to get to the end of the line as straight as possible and provide value for the customer on the phone, and then ask at the end if they're a good fit. Do you want to use credit card or do you want to go with debit card, right?" And this is how this was my first sales training. And he said after that, he's like, "All right, man. On Monday, which was a week from now, I'm going to mail out to my list. You're going to get calls booked on your calendar, and it's your job to close the deal."
Wow.
And it was $3,000 packages at the time. And so I was nervous, bro. I remember that Monday came around, just like he said, he mailed out. I had a crap ton of calls on my calendar with people that were interested in what he offered. And like you said, man, I didn't know how to close, bro. So I sucked at sales. All I knew is that I would talk to John. I knew John at the end of the conversation was going to say, hey, I need to think about it. Hey, let me go talk to my spouse. Hey, give me 48 hours to kind of think it through. And I didn't know what to say, dude. So I was like, okay, well, that's cool. But here was the kicker for me, man, is that I impressed Bedros, not because I was a great closer, but the one thing that I had in my advantage at the time is I would follow up like an animal, man. I remember I had people texting me, Mike, saying, hey, dude, like I've never been followed up like this in my life. I have text messages where people would call me follow-up king. Hey, bro, you're the follow-up king. I had people laughing because they're like, dude, I just can't get rid of you, huh? Like you're not going to go away.
Yeah.
And so that was my intro into sales, and that was the high ticket space. And then from there, as I progressed and I sets and reps and I got better, well, I went from selling $3,000 packages in a half an hour phone call. Then Bedros was like, hey man, do you think you could sell it at 10K? Then I was like, well, yeah, probably. So then we started selling $10,000 just over the phone. And then he's like, what about 15K? And I'm like, yeah, I think so. Let's do that. Yeah. So then we started selling 15.
Hard to sell 3 as it is 15.
That's it, man.
Sometimes it's more difficult to sell the smaller amount because if you have and $3,000 a month is not a frugal customer, but like a lot of times if you're selling something for $20 and people are like counting their $19, $20, they're getting out their change purse. And it's like, no, but when you do a lot of work there, like if you have the right client, the right fit, and you do a great sales presentation and you know how to close, the fit there with the right, customer closing a $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 deal is just the same. Yep. It's really the same process. You're just changing the value, more value, greater level product for a different dollar amount. But I just want to say, I didn't mean to cut you off, but really, really what's interesting about your story is you were so green, which was a great asset that I feel that he probably acknowledged, is that you weren't jaded. Because a lot of times when you're trying to hire a salesperson, you see that they've been like 3 or 5 companies, and then they've learned and started and stopped. Yep. It's almost like being on a football team with like 4 different offensive coordinators, and now you're getting a quarterback, and you're like, this guy had to relearn everything like 4 or 5 times, opposed to someone who's like a rookie. He's never been in an NFL system yet, and you can really make him yours, and you can really shape him. Exactly, so he probably saw you as a ball of clay.
That's it, man. Yeah. And he told me that. He's like, hey, man, you're a connector. Right? Like, you know how to connect with people. And he said, I could take that and I can make you a closer. And so, yeah, man. And by the end of it, I was selling $50,000 coaching packages over the phone for Bedros in one phone call, which was crazy at the time. I mean, even when I sold my first $3,000 package, I didn't even have $3,000 in my bank account at the time. So it was even weird asking for $3,000. It's
hard to do it at that point. Yeah.
It was hard. And so, and then that was, I learned how to close doing that. And then he said, hey, do you want to start selling my franchises? He's the owner of Fit Body Bootcamp franchise. I don't know if you know Fit Body Bootcamp or ever heard of Fit Body Bootcamp.
No, but I haven't really researched it, but I've heard of it. I definitely know what you're talking about.
Okay,
but
there you go.
I think it's awesome that you left an opportunity, kind of cleared yourself to start something new. You went with it, and you were willing to learn. And I think it sounds like you were someone that when he took you in that back room to say, here's something I'm going to show you about learning sales, you were willing to say, okay, man, I'm going to figure this out, do it your way, right? You're not arguing with him. Oh, I used to close like this every time it worked. Like, you weren't arguing. You were just saying, all right, man, keep showing me the way.
I didn't know.
Keep leading me. Yeah, you don't know what you don't know. So you obviously started to continue. You got better and better over time, more comfortable. You started making money. So then you started to see like the things I'm doing are actually leading me in the right direction. And I'm sure, I don't want to speak for you, but the confidence is in the product and service too. Like, most people get connected with the product or service or offer that they have, and they're really good in like the first 30 to 60 days. But then if they see the service side of it, like if you're selling boot camps and like nobody's coming out of there successful and everybody hates it, all of a sudden now, if you got wind of that and you started to read the reviews, the sales team starts to fall apart. So did you feel that the more you worked with this company and the organization and everything, and people went through boot camp and you saw the results, did that also help you sell better, that you could connect the dots with the offer?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had so much conviction in the product by the end of it that it didn't matter. Like, it didn't matter what the other person said, because at the end of the day, my conviction was stronger than theirs.
Right. It's like selling air or the cure to cancer. You're not going to be like, if someone doesn't do it, it's almost weird. Like, there's no way I can believe you're not going to get this right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just crazy.
Exactly. And I love when people say, oh man, I don't want to sell, right? Like, oh, I don't want, but I'm like, dude, every day you're selling. Like, if your mom was sitting there and she had a gash in her leg and her leg was bleeding out, you would be like, Mom, let me do you a favor right now and just put a bandage on your leg to stop the bleeding, right? Like, please let me do this. Like, I guess you're selling, but dude, you're doing it because you're going to help your mom. It's no different in anything you're selling, man. You're just helping people. So
Yeah, I 100%
a
agree.
good
Like we talked a little off camera. I have a background in sales, and anytime I did really well, it's because I connected the product and service with something I would sell. Speaking of your mom, like I would comfortably sell it to my friends, family, myself. I would own the product first. I'd be familiar with it and believe in the product. So it was all I had to do was be a great listener and then really connect, be a relator, a connector, and understand people's language. Everybody operates. There's really kind of 4 different ways people operate. You'll have the director who just wants to get the deal done real quick. If you start to get real chatty with them, you may lose them. You're going to have people who need to relate. You're going to have the guy who takes all 30 minutes of your 30-minute Zoom call to close the deal because they just want to chat and get to know you a little bit better. But they need that's their language, and that's the way that they operate. So you start to get really good at that. And that was something that I felt like was a gift for me, is always having that heart to want to get the right thing, and be more consultative than transactional, and people appreciated it, and that's what really allowed me to become a good closer. But I want to actually, we're going to take a quick break, give some love to our sponsors. We'll be right back with Richard, and we got some cool stuff. We're going to talk about remote closing and learn about that game in just 2 quick minutes.
Podcasting is a great way to engage with your audience and stay consistently relevant. The only problem is you don't have the time or desire to produce your own show. You simply want it done for you, and that's where Social Chameleon comes in. All you need to do is press record and upload the files. We'll handle the rest. From planning, production, post-production, distribution, and digital marketing, we have you covered. We realize that times are tough and funds are tight, and Social Chameleon believes in building supportive business relationships. By clicking on the link in this promo, we'll provide you 7 free podcasting tips to get started, as well as a free 30-minute online consultation. This is the perfect opportunity for entrepreneurs, keynote speakers, industry experts, influencers, and anybody who has a personal brand. With Social Chameleon, we help you build a brand that is out of this world. We're ready and waiting, so what are you waiting for? Click on the link to get started today. Hey guys, it's Mike. I'd like to give a proper shout out to Navigator Bookkeeping. Look, for a long time, I ran my business without really understanding the full financial picture. I used my gut and my bank account balance to make decisions, which led to some poor choices and constant stress over my business's finances. I knew something needed to change. At the beginning of 2021, I made a decision that helped pave a more clear path for my business. I started working with Navigator Bookkeeping. Since then, my bookkeeping has been handled for me. I now understand the full financial story of my business, making important financial decisions much easier now, and it helps me plan for where my business is going. I highly recommend giving Navigator Bookkeeping an opportunity to help your business. Check them out at navigatingyourbooks.com. Again, that's navigatingyourbooks.com. It's time to know the full financial story of your business.
All right, we're back in action with Richard Mugica. You guys can connect with him on social media. All those links are clickable in the show notes. His website's there. Check it out. One Call Closers. And I just want to, we teased it right before the break. Something that I know, you can help our audience with, Richard, is getting out of that 9 to 5, which you did yourself. So you have the story to tell. You've done it for yourself, so you can teach others how to do it. So we have a group of entrepreneurs and business owners tuning in. I want you to talk to them directly, and they need to add remote closing. So this group of people I want you to talk about, they need to add remote closing as an element to their online sales process. Can you first talk about how remote closing actually ultimately helps them close more deals?
How remote closing helps them close more deals. So, if you're an online
some people may not
company,
know what remote closing is. So let's kind of give them like the quick scoop on it, and then how it really is. It's basically like the fuel of the engine that's going to help them take off.
Yeah. Well, remote closing, in my opinion, so right now, a lot of people just are not aware of this, but the e-learning industry, right? Mm-hmm. The amount of information that is being bought online right now is growing like this. Mm-hmm. And everybody and their mother is coming out with a course, a product, a mastermind, a coaching program. They're selling digital products. And in order to sell those products, right, it's not like back in the olden days where you could just run a webinar funnel and somebody would just buy a $3,000 course from you over a webinar. Right. Nowadays, buyers are skeptical, right? So they want to know, man, before I get into a course, a product, a mastermind, like whatever it is, I need to talk to somebody and make sure this is the right fit for me. And that person that they're talking to is what I call a remote closer, right? Like you need somebody skilled on the phone that can take that lead and in one phone call close a $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 deal. And that's what One Call Closers does for, a lot of influencers in the online space. I always say there's 3 things that you need to be massively successful online. The number one thing you got to have is traffic. You got to have eyeballs, right? Then you got to have an offer that is phenomenal. And then you just got to have some closers, man. And if you have all 3 of those things, like that's all you need. It's just 3 things. And it depends on how well you do those 3 things is how well you're going to be successful online.
That's so good. Yeah,
And
it
we
really
help
is that
with
simple.
all 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people hire you, and are you working with them one-on-one, or is it like they get your coaching and then they learn how to do it and they're kind of off and running, or are you a little bit more hand in hand, like in lockstep with your clients?
So the agency side of it,
Yeah.
like for the One Call Closers, yeah, I mean the agency side, man, that's like the most done for you aspect of what we do, right? So like a client comes in, they have an offer, maybe they have some traffic, maybe they don't. But what we do is just say, hey man, like, listen, you don't have to spend time building up a remote closing team. And because here's the reality, man, is like building up a successful remote closing team, unless you already know people that are in the game and that are already closing at a very high level, more than likely you're going to lose tons of revenue just trying to ramp up a closing team. Because, they're going to miss deals. Compliance is not going to be there. They're going to say stupid stuff and you're going to have to train and train and train. It'll be 12 months before that team is proficient at what they do.
Right. So rather than
probably 12
months of all the different fires and things that can happen with training and firing, and also literally when I say fires, I just mean like what you're talking about, where someone may be saying the wrong things on a call. So now all of a sudden you got a new client with the wrong expectations, and you have to make sure you iron out the agreement with them that, hey, what they said we were going to do is not actually what we do. So we got to fix that problem. Rather than all that, they can get you a professional team. So basically, it's like outsourcing your sales team. Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Awesome.
And the way I see it, it's like outsourcing, but it's also internal. And what I mean by that, it's not like, oh, hey, here's your sales team. We do our thing. You guys do, like we align on every aspect of it. Whoever they have in their department that wants to be on the sales meetings, we'll connect either monthly or weekly, depending on how much they want to be involved. And then from there, it's literally like we're just a leadership and coaching company from there. Like every day we're running role plays. Every day we're running trainings. Every day we're hammering the phone, like the scripting of everything. So like it's a lot, but that's the game that we love to play. Right. And so that's one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is that we also create all the funnels for our clients. So all the high ticket funnels, because again, there's 3 things, right? You have the traffic, you have the offer, and you have the closing team. And the offer is another part of it. Like, what's the customer journey look like, right? As soon as that eyeball comes in, what do they see? After they see it, what experience do they have throughout the whole entire funnel? How does the VSL align to what they're looking for, right? How does the copy align to what they're looking for? And all these things, man, matter if you're gonna scale to $1 million a month. Like hitting $1 million a month in sales online, you got to be dialed in to do that. And so not only do the closing, we'll help with all the funnel creation, the customer journey. And then if they want us to, we also drive the traffic. And majority of our traffic's on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We're kind of starting to dabble into TikTok a little bit, but it's not something that we've completely kind of mastered at this point. But we do see a big opportunity with it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it's good to know that, hey, that's an area that we need to get better at instead of just lumping it in. I appreciate that you said, hey, these are the areas that we're already kicking butt in. And then we got a couple other areas that we're going to be getting involved with. But that's awesome. Then it's being able to provide that service from day one, opposed to all the learning curves and things that come with it. And I like that you corrected me on the fact of outsourcing kind of has a negative connotation. And I didn't mean it to have that.
Does.
But you're like, hey, no, we're going to be an extension of your team. That's actually at Social Chameleon. What we talk about too is, we're remote in that we're producing people's podcasts for them and doing all the audio, video, show notes, all the good stuff that goes into it, the cover art for them, but we're an extension of their team. Just because, we're
100%.
outside of the, we could say we're outsourced, but we really handle it as if we're an internal part of their company and team. So we think
exactly.
Great minds think alike, So
exactly, man. It's scary. It's scary for a lot of people because they're like, oh man, I don't want to outsource it. Like I want to keep control of everything, and it's your brand on the line. Like if the sales reps say something stupid, your reputation goes like.
And would the prospect even know? They wouldn't know, correct?
What do you mean?
Know. Like, let's just say it's ABC Company, and I'm online, and I'm like, oh, I want to buy this $3,000 program to ABC Company, and I click on it, it says, hey, schedule a call with Richard. All right, I'll do that. Tomorrow I'm going to Zoom with Richard. We hop on the call. You're doing the one call close with me. You're representing ABC Company. I would not know that you're Richard from One Call Closers, right? You would be representing that other company, no? Or how does that work?
We always keep everything like all aligned with the influencer. So the email addresses, the domain names, all that stuff is aligned with the company name. Right. And so that, anybody coming through would never know like, they're using
it's a white label service then. In that regard.
I guess that's a way of, that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. Because I think, it doesn't really necessarily matter as long as you're doing the right thing. But perception matters. And so, it's like if you went to a restaurant and the chef that they have in on this Friday night was someone that the owner knew and they brought him in for this big event or something, but he's not necessarily an everyday chef. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm not going to eat here tonight because this guy's not here every Friday. It's like, no, they decided who they're going to bring in to cook the meal, and it's the best of the best. So that's kind of what you're coming in to cook it up, right? So, but if you're,
right.
So I think it's important for the people tuning in to understand what we're talking about. When I say white label, if someone's not really familiar with that, all it is providing a service to another company. And instead of saying like Social Chameleon produced the podcast, we could say like XYZ company did it, but we're actually doing the work. They kind of get us the lead and we do it for them. That's an opportunity. But
exactly.
So that's really cool. And the importance in that is having that human touch, because someone spending a big amount of money, $3,000 and up on a program, you can either have someone buy the wrong thing and they're going to be really mad because they spent a lot of money and they didn't really understand what they were buying. And B, you're going to get a lot of hesitancy in the buying process if there's not that person to help lead them to make the right decision. So it's super important to have that call, that sales call, that presentation, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's everything, man. Like you got to have, Every company I know, Mike, wants the best people on the phones for their company, right? Like nobody wants like an amateur on the phone. Nobody wants the guy that's just getting started on the phone. Like, if you're a legit online business, you want legit people on the phones, Right. And so like that's the game that we have to play.
Yeah.
And then when we were designing the agency, right? Like I think one of the reasons why too it's been successful is because we've always done it on a performance basis. It's not like, oh, hey man, like you work with us, like pay us $20,000 to get started. We'll design everything for you and then we'll go from there. It's no like, dude, there's no upfront costs when you work with us. It's like literally nobody has anything to lose, but the only thing they have to gain is just a ton more revenue because we just take a percentage of what we earn for the influencer. So like that's how we've been able to slide ourselves into the door and say, hey man, you have nothing to lose by working with us. You can see the results almost immediately though. And then from there, it's up to you to gauge, hey, do you want this to be a real relationship or is it something that you're not into? And that always just gets us in the door.
Yeah, it gets you in the door and then it lets, the proof of what you're doing, the concept starts to show that it's proven. And then a great entrepreneur is going to see that in a half a second and they're going to acknowledge it and they're going to amp it up right away. I think that's really, really cool.
Exactly.
Something I'm going to give you this little thing. You can take this and run with it. Hiring your team, I'd call it the all-star team. Let's call you guys the all-stars, okay? So an all-star closing team, right? It's essentially I have to win a game today in baseball. We'll talk about, I'm a sports guy, so baseball. We need to win today. I'm going to hire Richard and his team. They're going to show up, put our uniforms on. They're the all-star team. Or I could go through the draft. Now I got to draft 9 guys, plus I got to get a pitching rotation and hope that some of them show up and can pitch the ball straight. And you got all this stuff, all these variables going on. Like, what team do you want to put on the field? I'll just take the all-star team. So there you go. There you can use that in your close. You can have the all-star team show up, or
you said it better. You said it better than us, man. That's exactly it. Like I've never put it that way.
Yeah.
But that's it, Mike. Like, yeah, it's up to you.
You could
to
ask
decide.
him, like, do you want to draft your different players and all the different places? You got a pitching rotation you got to worry about, or you can just hire the all-star team. We'll show up from day one. Yeah, that's great. I think that makes a lot of sense. The reason I do sports analogies is kind of for myself. I take things that could be slightly more complicated and just like to simplify them into sports analogies. And it works for me. It makes sense. And a lot of times I get the head nod of like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. And by the way, we do the same thing like when we train the reps, like when we go to, after the discovery phase, then we get into the pitch phase. Like we never pitch how everybody pitches online with like features and benefits and all this mumbo jumbo that everybody talks about. Like we always just hit them with an analogy. And like that's kind of what you're saying now is like, hey, use maybe a sports analogy or this analogy. And that's how we train all of our reps when it comes down to the end and show value, relate it to something that they can actually make sense of.
Yeah.
Right.
And
whether
know
that's
who you're talking
baseball
about.
Story or what.
You can bring up baseball, and if someone's like, yeah, I don't watch baseball, then you wouldn't want to go forward later on in the story with the baseball analogy. That wouldn't make sense. That would actually show them that you're not listening and you lose trust. So not that I'm here coaching you up. You're the man. So I want to hear the elements that you feel are some of the key elements to the perfect pitch. I know back in May you did a presentation on this. So I'm not asking you to necessarily have to list all the elements or do it as like a presentation right now for the audience, but more so you understand what goes into a strong pitch, the perfect pitch. What are some things that come to mind right now?
So number one, man, is like energy, right? Like when you're pitching, a lot of people, like tonality really matters. And I always say that there's the science to sales and then there's the art of sales. And everybody can learn the science, right? Like that's the words, the scripts, the tactics of sales. Listen, everybody's selling you that, right? But you have the other side of it, which is the art of sales. And the art is like Chris Rock, right? Like when he goes to give a presentation on stage, listen, he has a script there. He knows what he's going to say, but that's not why people laugh. People laugh because the way he says it, the energy that he brings, the little funky body movements that he does, that's what gets people to laugh. And it's the same in selling, right? And so when you're going to go pitch, man, your tonality, your energy better go up because part of your job during the pitch is to get somebody excited. Right? Like, oh man, this is like what I need. Oh, hell yeah. This guy is getting like this. I feel like this is what I need. I'm going to be successful if I get this. And I know it. And it's subconsciously, if you as a salesperson are excited, you're going to see, man, their tonality will go up with you and they'll get excited with you.
Yeah, I'll say
just
two
managing
things on that too is like, is when you do it, but it's genuine, people feel it. If you have an unnatural feeling, humans, we can definitely feel it on the phone, Zoom call, especially in person. So I do agree, like having that energy where someone does care. We're getting you this thing. It's going to help you. I'm so excited after you now know them enough where it makes sense to be that excited. It's like a first date. You don't come into it super excited. You got to get to know someone first. And then when that moment, when someone tells you like, I'm going on vacation with my family, then all of a sudden you know that person a little bit better. You know the family. And when you're excited for them, that's a natural response. So it's the same kind of thing in sales. Like you're working with them and you feel it. And I agree with you. Energy is really, it's everything. And it makes a lot of sense. Funny that you use Chris Rock. All I can think about is the slap for some reason. I got to get that out of my head. Where,
with the tortilla?
No, the Will Smith.
Oh, the Will Smith slap. Oh man, that was brutal. Oh, that was hard to watch, man. Me and my wife were cringing like, oh gosh darn it, that just happened. Holy crap.
I still cannot believe he handled it that way. I think he could have not been, he could have scoffed or something or said something to him afterwards or tweeted about it after the event and people would have been like, oh, okay, Will Smith's sticking up for his wife and we can respect that. But the fact that he went up on stage, distracted the show, said the F-bombs that he did, get my wife's name out of your mouth, and then he actually physically assaults him. I just thought none of that made any sense to me, especially coming from Will Smith, who I thought was more of a highly respected dude. So you got to wonder what he's dealing with in his personal life that would set him off to allow him to do that.
Brutal.
And then he wins the award. He wins the award for best
And then
actor,
he wins the award
crying.
to top it all off.
He's crying. He's thanking everybody in the ceremony. He's like,
my
this
gosh.
guy 15 minutes ago was like going to the LAPD, but now we're Chris Rock says, no, we don't want to do anything there. So I guess we'll just let him win an award. Absolutely crazy event, but that's a whole side. That's a tangent, but it's funny when you're talking about Chris Rock. I still can only think about that I got to get over that.
Oh, that's crazy, man. That's crazy.
Yeah. But he is someone like I totally get what you mean, where a great comedian will do that. They have their jokes that they got prepared, kind of like a skeleton of what they're going to do. They get up on stage, but now they're riffing off the crowd a little bit. They're in a different city, might have a different energy. Their first few jokes don't hit, so now all of a sudden they got to kind of coordinate. A band is the same thing. I'm a musician. When we're playing a show, sometimes certain things gel differently. In some shows, it may seem like you're trying harder to get it to go. And there's going to be shows when you played your face off and you're like, I don't even know. It felt like my drumsticks were just playing themselves. It's just I didn't have to do any work.
Yep.
And you just flow with it. So
That's
energy,
exactly right, man.
Energy is definitely something that's huge in sales. So I'm glad you said that. What about as far as the pitch? Like, when I'm thinking of pitch right now, I'm thinking of like Shark Tank, and we're talking about like pitching a business, but just pitching a product or service. When you get into it, obviously, ideally, you would have a qualified buyer that you're talking to. What if you don't? So what if you just get like a generic lead off line? What are some ways that you can ensure you're not wasting your time, get it qualified, or get them into a different, what do you do if it's not qualified? Let's talk about two scenarios, qualified versus it's totally the wrong fit. What do you recommend?
Yeah. Well, as a closer, man, it's not your job to get everybody to say yes, right? Like that's not why we're on the phone. It's our job just to get a decision, whether that's yes or that's no. And we're never there to push anybody into a decision that is not going to benefit them, right? So if we get somebody on the phone and we're going through the discovery phase and we're asking them like, hey man, why'd you reach out? Hey, what interested you in you and what you saw online? Hey, what are the things that you're looking for out of a mentor XYZ? And their answers are like completely different than what we're looking for. Then what we do is just say, hey man, like, appreciate the conversation, Jeff. Like, this was awesome, man. But to be completely honest with you, dude, like, this is not going to be the best fit for you, right? Like, I wouldn't feel comfortable moving forward. However, with that being said, take a look at this. So if we have another option for them, like in terms of another company, another course, another product, we'll try to say, hey, go take a look at that. And that might be a better fit for you, right? And so
you're still helping
that's
them
what
out.
we do.
You're still pointing them in the best direction possible. But
exactly, man. That's if we get somebody unqualified. Now, in our line of work though, Mike, to be honest with you, we get very, very few unqualified people because we get applications, right? So we already know why this person's scheduling the call, what interested them in what they saw, what are they looking to get out of XYZ. And so they're pretty much usually a good fit. So during the discovery process though, we have to go a lot deeper. And by the way, like your audience watching this, if they're selling online, if they have a sales team, like where we spend all of our time coaching and training, a majority of our time is in that discovery process, right? The questions that you're asking, the responses that you're giving. And the reason why is because, like, Mike, as you know, man, the pitch is going to be very similar every time. Like you can master a pitch over time, right? You can master objection handling over time. But the discovery process is the most dynamic part of the call because listen, you don't know what the prospect's going to say. Like he might have this problem or he might have this problem. He might want it because of this or he might want it because of that. He might have tried this or he might have tried that. And so depending on what the prospect's now telling you, that dictates what comes next, right? So a lot of that portion is being able to think on your feet using a framework, you as a closer to start digging a little bit deeper, getting the intel that you need, and then using that intel later to design your pitch. And then if you do the pitch right, you really shouldn't get any objections besides, hey man, the only thing is like, I love it. I want to do it. This is what I need, but I honestly just can't afford it, bro. Like I'm looking through my bank account right now and I have 3 credit cards that only have $1,000 each on them. And there's no way I can come up with an extra $5,000.
right.
It's like, okay, that's fine. That guy's he's not financially qualified. Like he literally does not have the money. And so that's how we train our reps. So to your point, with somebody that is qualified, then bro, like if they're qualified and they need it, let's close the deal. Let's get them in the program because we know it's going to change their life.
Mm-hmm. No, that's awesome, man. So where do you see, obviously you built this, you started off on the phones, working for, and say his name again, who is the entrepreneur who gave you your first opportunity?
Bedros Keuilian.
So Bedros, hats off to Bedros, right? And he got you started, and then that was your opportunity to really become who you've become now. So where do you see this going? What's your bigger vision, both for yourself and your company? Maybe more of like a big vision of where you're looking to go.
Yeah, well, company-wise, man, so we have just 2 goals right now. And one of our biggest problems in our company, which leads me to the one called Closers University that you talked about. Like, listen, there's no shortage of influencers that need our service, right? Mm-hmm. There's no shortage. Like, there's so many people selling information online. There's so many people that don't know how to build great sales teams, and they're stuck. So there's no shortage of that. But what there is a shortage of, there's a shortage of great closers. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, it's hard to find great closers. And so
there's another baseball analogy. There's literally the last pitcher of the game is called the closer, and it's hard to find one that's going to be as good as Mariano Rivera for as long as he was good. But most teams don't have, like, if you have a solid closer they can rely on, you're probably, I'd say every 3 to 5 teams has a good one, and like 1 out of 12 teams might have really like a great closer, and like 1 out of 32 teams has the guy that everyone says, if you're in the World Series and you're up 3-2, who comes to mind? And for so many years it was Mariano Rivera. Now there's the guy, I can't think of his name because I'm not a Mets fan, but the guy in Diaz for the Mets, he's kind of the new guy that everyone would say, that's who I want closing out the 9th. But you're right, closers, they're it's a prime.
It's a prime. So the way that we're now going to solve that in our agency is what we're hoping is then we launch the one called Closers University. It's not fully launched yet. It's about to be launched. But our goal with that is to say, hey, you know what? Listen, if you're interested in remote closing, having freedom in your life, working from anywhere in the world, all of our closers make anywhere from $10,000 a month to $30,000 a month remotely, right? It's like, who doesn't like that? And then so that's what we're going to do, man. We're going to take people, put them into the university, certify them. So they'll have to get certified through us. That's going to be role plays, quizzes, and then also workbooks. And if they can get certified by One Call Closers, then we'll offer them a position within our agency to now close. And that's how we're trying to solve that problem that we're currently experiencing in our agency. So
cool. So they kind of work for you first, selling your product, and then eventually, as they become so good at that, you'll then allow that person to be, if I'm an entrepreneur and I hire you, then they would work for that team as well. More of the agency model you're talking about. Do I get that right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now they would be trained, certified, have experience closing, and then they can move into taking over an influencer's account.
Yeah.
From
that's
there.
Awesome.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very, very cool. So do you have any books out, anything like that? I know you're on a ton of podcasts, obviously, but
I don't have any books out, man. I've been told, like, a couple people in my company, like, hey, you should write a book, do this, do that. I'm like, hey, man, I agree with you. I maybe should write a book, but I haven't started one. I've thought about it, but no book as of yet.
That's fine. And it was a lead-in question. The reason for it is, if you did have one, I'd want to promote it right there in the moment. And the second part of it is this is kind of how I like to wrap up the interview. It puts a big bow on the conversation and gets you thinking about really, really long-term big goals. So imagine this. You're the author and protagonist in your own life story, and you get to write the ending. God willing, you continue to live a long, prosperous life. You're looking back at it, and you get to define your legacy. What would that be?
So I listened to a guy named Alex Hormozi, if you know who that is.
Yep.
He really changed my perception on legacy, Mike. Mm-hmm. And he used to say, hey, I want to work for legacy. But he's like, the reality is that once you're gone, nobody's really going to be thinking about you, right? Like, humans have enough problems in their life where they're not going to sit down and say, oh man, I wish Richard was right here with me, or I could, And so the legacy I want to leave, man, is just right here, right now. I got 4 kids, 7 years old and younger. I got my wife. We want to adopt in the future. And so I want to be known it doesn't matter what I do with the business, one call closers. Like I want to help people. I want to help people have freedom in their life and be closers and do what they love. That's for sure. But my number one priority is my family and making sure that I'm not so busy out there trying to change the world that I'm not with my family and changing the lives that truly matter every single day. Right. And so that's the legacy, I guess you can say I want to leave. I don't want my kids to ever say, "Hey, my dad did great with one call closers, but I didn't know who he was. He didn't know who I was."
Yeah, dude, really, really well said. And I think it's important that you focus on the now too. A lot of times when people think legacy, they just talk about many, many years from now. But it's really like planting the seeds. You're already doing a lot of the stuff now. You don't have to have a book out, right? To say that you made it. But the thing is,
Exactly.
I was thinking about this too. And you just mentioned it with your kid. Like, you don't want them to say, yeah, he was great in business, but there's this huge lack. He wasn't even in my life, or we weren't that close. You said that you're close with your dad, so you have an appreciation for that and totally can relate, which is awesome. But the thing that I think about too is like, if I quote unquote win as a successful entrepreneur, right? Or I should say when I do, right? And we're talking about it happening. The last thing I'd want is to be the only one that won. Like, then it doesn't matter, because then it's like, okay, cool, you did this cool thing and great, and you were kind of isolated. It matters about like the people that touched and the lives that are improved and all the people that were inspired that come with it. That's really when you start to think about the legacy piece, right?
Oh, 100%. Like even with your company, right, Mike? Like you have all these people helping you, create podcasts. And listen, I'm assuming they get some type of purpose out of it, right? Or else they wouldn't be doing it.
Exactly.
And so you're installing purpose in others. I'm sure you have your family where they have purpose, in that. And it's the truth, man. Like I try never to lose sight of why do I do what I do, right? Like I used to think, oh man, I'm going to go out and build this $100 million business. But I'm like, why? Yeah. Is it because I want $100 million? Is it because I want to tell my buddy, oh man, I went out and built a $100 million company. Are you proud of me? Are you going to? Yeah. And so it's these questions that you have to ask in life to really figure out, why the hell am I doing what I'm doing? And then when you figure that out, then it's like, oh, well, I don't need to do that to have that. I can just do this and accomplish my ultimate goal. Right.
Otherwise you end up taking fake bathroom breaks, dreaming about your next move.
That's it, man.
That's what this whole episode is about. Stop taking bathroom breaks, dreaming about your next move, and just go and do it. Hey, man, like I said, I sold insurance. I didn't necessarily do that same thing, but I definitely know that, I took opportunities to kind of chat up the water cooler talk a little extra, because I was kind of just not feeling it that day. And it's like, oh man, I was always talk to my buddies, but I did extremely well, but I knew I wasn't. When you're not in your calling, you kind of, you feel this thing of like, you're never really static or still. You're either moving forward or you feel like you're being pulled backwards. And when you're feeling you're being pulled backwards, it's not a good feeling. So you got to kind of strip yourself from it and get the hell out of there. And just, like you said, you quit before you totally had the game plan. I'm actually someone who funny enough, before this interviewing you, I was on somebody else's show as a guest, and they were asking me like, did you quit cold turkey? And I did. I actually did the same thing you did. Put my 2-week notice in. I knew I was going to be an entrepreneur, and I think I already had my S Corp and like I took care of the legal stuff, but I had no idea what we were really going to do. I had no I didn't have a 12-month business plan mapped out or what my plan B was. It just my plan A and B was both go and kick ass. That's all I knew.
Go and kick ass.
I'm just going to go do my best. That's it.
Yes. And I'm sure it wasn't a straight line, right? It wasn't like
not. Yeah. Put the straight line in a blender, and then we have a pretty much better depiction of what it looked like. But this is a lot of fun. Like I said, I get geeked up talking about sales because I come from a place is when you do the right things, you always are excited, and someone signing up for your product or service is worth celebrating. You're not conniving anybody. You're not just selling someone to say, we just sold $3,000. You're changing a life. They're signing up for something that's important.
Gotta remember that.
The other thing is too, like when you sell a high ticket program like that, and that when they do the right things that are in the program, and now it changes their life, and they can go achieve their first 7-figure business. Feeling. That you planted the seed.
It's the greatest feeling, man.
Yeah.
I'll leave with this, Mike. I know we got to get going.
Yeah.
But our company's statement, right, company wide, is nothing good in life happens until a sale is made. And that's the motto that our entire company lives by, because I truly believe it. I truly believe it.
It is true. Otherwise, like indecision is like a cancer, you know? You got to decide. Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's great what you're doing. I love what you're doing, and I cheers to your continued success. I always leave our audience with two things right here. It's be great and be grateful. That's what's up here on the hats. All the money I get on the Mic'd Up merch, it all goes to charity. So we got the be great, be grateful. I got t-shirts that say be bold on them, you know, so cool. There's a lot of different things. Be kind. Just these little reminders that are real simple thoughts, but like things that I live by, little motives, things that are heart-centered, you know what I mean? So be great, be 100%. Grateful. I'm going to continue watching you and your trajectory to success. Now, I appreciate you giving us an hour to talk about your story and inspire our audience, man. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Mike. This was awesome, man. Really appreciate it.
I'd like to give a huge shout out to everyone for tuning in, especially those who listen all the way to the end to hear this message. Seriously, I appreciate you, and my guests do as well. Giving a quick reminder to subscribe to this show. It's completely free and will allow you to receive notifications when new episodes are released. If you'd like to provide a tip as a gift, you can do so via patreon.com/mikedup. It's spelled MIKED up. Patreon.com/mikedup. You can give as little as $1 per month or as much as you'd like. Every dollar is greatly appreciated and completely unexpected. Appreciate your reviews and your messages coming in on social as well. Keep them coming. Your feedback is valuable and absolutely means the world to me. You can check out more episodes and content at mikeduppodcast.com. We're powered by Social Chameleon. You can also follow me on Instagram. That's where I'm the most active, and it's at Mike DiCioccio, MIKEDICIOCCIO. Thank you so much for your continued support. You guys know what to do. Be great and be grateful.